Hello guys, this is Dabo. I'm taking a look at some more incidents. We have quite a lot to go through. I'm going to try to be as detailed as possible in all the clips, so unfortunately this video is going to be quite lengthy. I've seen a lot of people comment on the different clips already in the forums. However, I'm not in a position where I have the time to sort of link these discussions to the clips, so forgive me if I jump to conclusions that don't respect the discussions that have taken place. I'm just gonna go with what I'm seeing in the clips. The first clip is from extrovert's perspective. And there's a few things to start off with when looking at this clip. Number one, it's the first lap of the race. This means that tires are cold and brakes are cold. Number two, it is the first corner. And you have Miksta here, which he's going to go side by side with into this corner. Which can work. I mean, it's nice racing when you can make it work. But in the very first lap of a race, it is something you need to be extra careful when doing because of the conditions you find your car in. And if we play this clip first, let's see what just happens from extrovert's perspective. They're going into the corner, wide entry, sort of closing a little bit, and then spectacular spin. And he also gets some contact here while standing on the track. Let's first talk about this bit of contact that happened here. So Mad Dog here is the one that it looks like, at least from extrovert's perspective, is the one that goes into him when he's stationary after having had the contact. And this is something that is very unnecessary and should be avoided. There's not too much I can do to analyze it. He probably had a difficult time coming towards extrovert. There probably was a lot of close racing that happened behind him or with Mad Dog and guys around him, but when you see stuff happening ahead of you, you need to just slow down. Like, you need to be extra careful. There's no reason damaging the cars ahead of, or that already have been in an accident more, or damaging your own vehicle for the sake of being fast. So let's go back then and see what actually happened in the incident here. If we start with the turn-in, we can see here that the space here is really like starting out very wide as you can get. There's space on the inside to for Miksta to use, and Miksta is of course here on his side. Basically they're going parallel into this corner here. So the lines have been established. They're basically going side by side through the corner, and the goal is of course to not make contact. Of course it doesn't work out that way in this clip. If I just go forward towards the middle of the corner, we can see now the space on the outside is a lot more. So there's room here to play with, and this is something extrovert can take advantage of. The room on the inside has shrunk. However, I'm not going to say that the door is completely closed, and we're going to see a different perspective of this, and we can see that there is enough room on the inside here. So there's not too much really that you can say that this is the reason the accident happened. It's more that there is space here, so there is option to go wider if you want to be more careful, which you probably should consider, considering it's the first lap. Granted, you're not the one responsible for keeping a tight turn and not going wide because you're on the outside line. However, you're responsible for making, you're both equally responsible for making it through the turn when you're going side by side. So let's look at this from a different perspective. Let's look at it from Miksta's, no, not Miksta's, from Chaos Bandit's perspective. He has a nice view here from the back where we can see extrovert, we can see Miksta here. they're going more or less side by side into this right-hander. The lines are pretty clear, they know each other, they know know where the other guys are, and when we start going through this, if we can do that, we can see that as they go towards the apex, the room does close, but you can still see that there is still space here for Mixta to make a safe turn. So as we've gone through, that is clear enough. And then what happens there with Mixta is that he does lose some grip and goes wide. There's a little bit of loss here of grip from Mixta's vehicle, and it goes wide into extrovert. We talked about the cold tires and being careful around the corner. This is extremely important, especially for the guy on the inside line, because you have to be slower through the corner, you have to avoid going wide. You basically have to hug the inside, and when your tires and brakes are cold, it is tricky. The track is also not as grippy, if that's a word, as it would have been later on in the race, as Project Cars simulates more grip on the track later on as a result of a bunch of cars having burnt rubber on the track. So there's not too much more to say about it. Let's play it and see what happens. It does go a bit wide there, and the contact happens. Let's jump to the next clip. It's also on the first lap of the race. I don't know, I think this is the second race actually, and the other clip was from the first race. I can't really keep track of the different races, but I can keep track of the laps, of course. The laps are very important. Another thing that is very important is, of course, the mindset of the players. This becomes more and more important later on in the race, but I can't really say too much about the mindset either. I can just make some general comments on mindsets that I experienced myself. So this clip, it's very interesting. It's 4 cars involved in this one. And it's from not the greatest perspective, but we can still do some analyzing here. So we have 3 cars in a line here. Don't look at this car. This car is not in the. Look at that. It looks like a poop. This car is not involved in this. We have Bilskid here, and ahead of Bilskid is Racing Fool, and ahead of Racing Fool is Kairos. They're going in a line. They're having a relatively different speeds related to each other, so they have to sort of spread out, as we're going to see. They will spread out to cover the whole width of the track. But then we have this other vehicle here on the outside, on the right side, which plays a big role in this particular incident. So I'm just going to go through this slowly here, if I can be on the right window. Here we go, we see Bilskid now going right here to avoid going into Racing Fool. If we continue, we see that Racing Fool is now going right to avoid going into Kairos. So we have Kairos there, we have Racing Fool here, and we have Bilskid, who have gone quite a lot of ways to the right, and there is space now for Racing Fool in the middle. But then we have this vehicle, and notice there's something off about the positioning of this 4th vehicle. Does it not look like he's sort of outside of the track? Right? It looks like this person is on the outside of the track, which is sort of weird. Like, I'm just looking at that 4th vehicle, and it looks to be like it's very wide there. And if we go forward a few moments here, we can see that he then goes more back into the track, and at this point we can see that he's more or less back in within the lines. But the problem here is that he's now directly in front of Bilskid. And Bilskid has a lot of speed, and this guy that was very wide probably has a slower speed because of the change of trajectory, and maybe he hit some grass on the outside as well, we don't know. And then of course we have extrovert here, or not extrovert. I'm sorry, I'm mixing those up. This is Racing Fool. We have him there. He went, of course, to avoid Kairos. So they're going into this, and it's very spectacular. Like 3 wide, almost 4 wide. If we continue here, we can see that they are forming up to what looks like a 4 wide formation here, as Bilskid now turns, obviously, to avoid going into this guy on the right side. And this is very, very risky driving. Now it's a very nice view. We have these 4 cars here lining up, but this is super risky. Like, this is not 9 times out of 10 this ends in disaster. It's pretty, and the problem is that 1 time out of 10 it works. Like, you can see how this could work. I hate that I have to click there all the time. You can see how this could work. With a little bit of luck, you can sort of make this work. You can see the light there in the front. They know what they need to do to avoid certain death. But light contact is made, and of course Project Cars does its thing. Bilskid goes flying up into the air. Beautiful air. Kairos gets screwed over. Racing Fool, looks to be more or less fine. Maybe it took damage. We can't tell from this perspective. But you know, regardless of who took damage in this particular incident, they were all at great risk. All 4 of them. So let's now go to the next clip, which is on a very different time of racing. It's on the very last lap of a race. Ooh. And to top it off, it's between the 1st and 2nd positions. And it's even in the last sector of the last lap of the race. So, at the last lap, you know, you're exhausted, mentally tired from racing. Who knows what happened in the race? Maybe you're a bit like frustrated. Something didn't go your way. From this perspective, from Yasurik's perspective, he's obviously been able to keep up with the P1, which is Logger in this case. He's been able to keep up with him. Maybe he's faster. Maybe Logger has done a good job defending his position. So you just like at this point, keeping it cool is what sort of gets you the longest way, or nets you the most results. Because what happens there, I guess you have already seen the clip, goes out to the grass here to make this pass, which obviously it's not really too much of a pass. It's for the first of all, it's a dive. Second of all, it's a dive without being properly on the track. So there's a lot of it's very like an ugly decision here, and it loses both of them positions. However, we need to be mindful that it is on the last lap, and you have to know that people do make less thought or well thought through decisions when under stress like this. So it's just something that comes with experience. It's really, I don't want to dwell too much on the actual racing here. One thing I would like to say though is that as you get back on the track, you should let Logger go past you again and give him his position back, which was, I noted, was discussed on the forums as well. Let's go to the next clip then. This is another case of 3 wide or very risky racing. It's on the same straight as we reviewed a clip from earlier, and very similar case. I'm going to play it here. We see Animera's perspective. We have Yasurix on his left now. Then we have Usil here going in the middle. Animera is giving a lot of space, as much space as possible. He's have 2 wheels off the track, and then he gets shunted out into the wall by Uziel. So it looks very nasty from Animera's perspective. Now this is from Yasurik's perspective. He's going here, coming up to Uziel. He notes that Animera goes to the right, so he has basically, if Yasurik's here, he has a few decisions he can make. He's noted that Animera is going to the right, so that's clear. So split second decision, go left or back off. In theory, you can fit 3 cars on this track. People had plenty of cases where they went 3 wide. It worked out, but I would still say it is a very risky maneuver on a track like this. It's not the widest track, and there's nothing to say about the conditions here or the tires or anything. So it's just about the racing. Like, risky racing is probably not worth it. And this is also another thing. It's between the leaders of the race. So if we continue, he goes to the left. He sees the opportunity to make something happen here, and then the contact happens behind him, really between Animera and Uziel. So not too much more to see from the rest of this clip. So let's just jump to another perspective from Jack's perspective. We can see a very nice view here of the 3 cars as they go down this very, very straight line. 3 wide. And I can't really analyze the driving here, because Animera is showing a lot of room. Yasurix was showing a lot of room, and the room in the middle for Uziel it's just danger territory, basically. You can see he goes a little bit close to Animera, then he goes back out close to Yasurix, then he goes into Animera. So you can say here that, oh, Uziel should have driven straighter, but it's not like an easy thing to do when you're 3 wide. Like, when you're in the middle, you sort of don't want to hit into anyone, and it's understandable that if you're pushing like all these guys were doing and risking the positions that you're in to gain the first place, it does happen. Stuff like this does happen because of that. So enough of that clip. Let's go to a braking zone contact. We're on board with How Good Am I again, and it's between How Good Am I and who is it? I don't quite remember. Let's see what happens there. Yeah, it's between How Good Am I and Epic Loots, which is the guy behind him here in the mirror, and it's basically Epic Loots not being observant enough about his braking and ending up going into Jack here. As we can see, he gets contact there, and then somehow the car corrects itself. It looks like some other contact there corrected him. But there's a few things to note here. For the first off, we have Logger here, who is the furthest ahead. Jack, he needs to respect Logger's movement towards this corner, and they are not overlapping as they go into this. They are pretty much, they're still, it's hard to say for sure, but it looks like there's still like room here. But this means that Jack needs to, in order to make this a safe corner, he needs to brake at the very latest at the same time as Logger. To make it more safe, he needs to brake before Logger, which it looks like they brake pretty much on at the same moment here. And if you can see at this point, I believe contact would have been made between these guys if they were to go, if Jack were to brake earlier and risk going side by side, which would have been probably would have been considered a dive because of how far back he starts off here. So braking like a car length earlier just to get side by side to Logger here is a very bad move. So Jack does the right thing here, but then Epic Loots behind brakes too late and ends up going into Jack here. So you need to brake earlier when you're further back in the field. There's not too much more to analyze about that clip. It's a very simple piece of contact. Here we have Yasurix. We have a very similar case to start off with. It's Sai this time going into Yasurix. It's on the first lap of the race. Another one of those where the tires are cold and brakes are cold. But it's a very similar piece of incident, this one. There's a lot of cars ahead, and Yasurix, he needs to brake very hard here. Oh, he brakes very hard. He does a good job avoiding going into Epic Lut's hair, but he still gets a little bit of contact there from Sai, and Sai actually ends up going out wide here on the right and picks up like two other guys go into him. Something happens. Difficult to tell from this perspective, but very similar case where people in the back need to be really observant of what's happening ahead of them. But there's a different incident that happens in this clip, which is even more exciting to analyze. It's between Ice, P-Top Man, and Epic Lutz. And we have Ice here on the wide line through this right-hander. We have P-Top Man on the inside line through this right-hander. Ice and P-Top Man are side by side. P-Top Man is maybe a little bit further back. And then we have Epic Lutz here. And Epic Lutz has a different line as he approaches this corner. He has a much later apex through this right-hander here. And that requires him to brake more, I should say. It requires him to brake more. It allows him, the line he takes allows him to have a higher speed, but because of what's happening between P-Top Man and Ice, he is required to brake more to avoid making contact with these guys. And you can see as they go through this corner, it's a little bit hard to see what happens, but P-Top Man pretty much has to keep a very slow average speed to make the inside line. Hard to say if Ice has more space on the outside here to play with. He probably does. But in terms of P-Top Man and Ice, it looks like they are more or less able to go through that corner. But then Epic Lutz comes with a higher speed here and forgets to brake to avoid contact with the P-Top Man, is what it looks like. So it looks like there's some contact there between Epic Lutz and P-Top Man, which causes P-Top Man to go into Ice on the left side, and then P-Top Man goes back into Epic Lutz on his right side. P-Top Man spins out, Epic Lutz gets out of it, Ice sort of goes wide, but he gets more or less out of it. And I would like to see in this particular case, when someone spins out like P-Top Man does, I would like to see Ice giving back the position to P-Top Man, Epic Lutz, of course, giving back the position, allowing P-Top Man to gain his place back. Regarding giving his place back with the straight liner that we looked at here, it's a more difficult case to say if UCL should give back his position to Ranamera because of the risk involved. There was no like harm or ill intentions in this. I don't want to go too much back on this clip, but you get what I'm saying. This is more like, this is where people will have the right intentions, but they just, the risk involved in the racing is just too high. Okay, let's go back to where we were. We were in this sort of little clip right here. We just saw it, but we have another perspective of it from my own perspective. I'm a little bit further back, and you can see here was the first incident that happened between Sai, us, and some other guys got caught up in it. We can't really tell too much about that. But they're not having a good time. And then we have this incident happening here where with Epic Lutz and P-Top Man and Ice, and we can see how P-Top Man spins out here on this, or not spins out, but goes out here on the side. And then we have this sort of area opening up where there's sort of this opportunity for me to make a run through this. Gain like 1 to 3 positions, maybe 4. So I was thinking, without thinking straight, because it's the first lap of the race, so risky maneuvers should be held back in the first lap and the last lap of a race. But this one I just felt like I couldn't miss out on, because these guys were all now going quite slow and I was going quite fast. And I make a wrong decision at this point. Right here I should have slowed my car down and not tried to go for these passes that I'm going to go for. We can see Ice here, he's going back on the track. It's a clean re-entry to the track, I would say. There is some sort of argument to be made in this case where Ice could have waited on the side of the track for people to pass, because there's a lot of people still coming through in this area. It's very early on, so there's still a lot of people close together, so there is some sort of argument to that. However, I don't think it's like too big a deal in this case, but just keep that in mind when watching this. Then we have Animera here, Epic Lutz there. Epic Lutz was just involved in an accident where I think he should have given back a position, but that's neither here or nor there for this clip. And I make the wrong decision of going full out for this run. I'm going to go frame by frame. You can see here I'm going past Animera, and at this point there's no way back. If I push too hard on the brakes, I risk going into Animera. So I basically committed to this run when I pass Animera on this on here to his left. And you can see Epic Lutz there. From what we can see from my perspective, he looks to be quite far on the right. And Ice, of course, getting back on the track, really slow moving. And I'm just going for this. I'm committing to this maneuver, and it's the wrong thing to do. Because as I almost make it my way through, there's not enough turn-in that happens for me here to the left, and I end up making contact with Epic Lutz. There we go, and we both sort of spin out. So this is one of those where I should have waited for Epic Lutz to get back on track. I believe, in retrospect, I should have allowed him the place ahead of me. But I was going faster than him, so at the moment, because I had like the momentum advantage, I was going through. I thought that, okay, I would have been ahead of him anyways if we didn't make contact there, so I didn't wait for him. But, you know, you could say I should have waited for him there. Okay, let's look at another clip. It's at the end of a race, so I make this very silly driving here, following Sai on this straight that we've seen so many clips from, and my mind like sort of shuts down for a second here, because you can see right there I make some sort of contact. We make some sort of contact. I'm like thinking, oh shit, are we like actually is this like contact happening here? Are we actually making contact here? Which you can't tell, like visually you can see that there's some sort of bump happening there. But as I go to turn, the Project Cars physics drags along Sai, and notice how I said Project Cars physics and not my own, or to put the blame away from myself. I'm not gonna do that. This is stupid of me to go so far ahead. It's another one of those very risky type of drivings, not really being observant enough or careful enough. And he almost loses, or he does lose control of his car, almost crashes, but gets out of it okay, I guess. And then I give him back the position, because there was no like clear decision there of who was faster than the other guy. But then we carried on, and there's a new clip here this is further down on the same lap, last lap. I'm still not done messing about. This is like another very tricky situation. We're going into this braking zone, coming through here. I'm making the turn. Lines are established, I would say. Like at this point, crew chief is telling me it's clear on my left, and I can see him in my rear view mirror there. But then what happens is that I start braking, and you can see him there behind me, but then he starts braking a little bit later, it looks, or he wants to have a higher speed through this chicane. I have already begun turning in at this point because I'm seeing him in my rear view mirrors, but then he's on my side again. And this is not a nice place to be two people side by side because of really like awkward curbing happening here. So little bit of a unfortunate things. This exact clip. Contact is made. I don't have grip there. I'm heading towards this stupid curb, and I spin out. Sai, on the other hand, he makes it out, so that's good for him. But then, yeah, I spin out, and it is a risky maneuver trying to go too much. Too close together through a chicane like this. It's difficult to say who was in the right here. He does brake a little. He does manage to get on my side here, which causes the contact. So what I could have done differently here is probably to stay wide and then take a later turn in, make my way through. I don't do that, of course, as we've seen. But that could have saved the contact here. So I, of course, could have started braking a little bit earlier to avoid getting on my side here. So a little bit of a case where both drivers can do some things differently, I think. And we've seen the rest of this. Now, there's some more clips here. Not done yet. This is some clips from Sai's perspective. This first one, let's just take a look. Yeah, he goes here into Bill's Kid, and it's one of those braking zones again where very light contact in these Formula Golfs can cause quite a lot of problems for other drivers. They go in here. He brakes. Late. He brakes late, considering he makes contact with Bill's Kid. He should have started braking earlier. And especially when you know that there are like 3 people here following each other, it's very important that you brake earlier than the guys ahead. So you can see the contact is made. Bill's Kid loses control, spins out. Not too much more to say about this clip, but Sai should definitely, in this case, give Bill's Kid back his position. Absolutely no reason not to give Bill's Kid back his position here. There's more clips. Yes, here we have another clip. This is Sai again going side by side to Epic Lutz, who is sort of standing here. They're going into this chicane, and for the first part of the chicane, it works out relatively well. They get through that first left-hander decently, and then I think Epic Flutes thinks that he is a bit further ahead than he really is, because they're still side by side, and crew chief is still saying still there, right? He just said still there, and then Epic Flutes shuts the door here on the inside. This is not enough room on the inside for Sai to make a good clean line. So a little bit of a failure to show respect there by Epic Lutz, to show respect to the lines. You can see contact is made. Sai almost spins out, but then Animera comes and saves the day with a little bit of a push there to straighten out the vehicle. So quite a long video today, guys. So much to go through. I'm sorry if the oh shit, it's starting again. Sorry if some of the analysis or analyzation became a little bit too rushed in some parts, but I just wanted to do all these clips in one go, so that's the way we did it today. And I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Goodbye. Goodbye.